Well, hey everybody, I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to As Above, So Below, a rune and tarot divination for Thursday. What are we here? The 14th day of March, 2024. Well, I hope you're having a good week. It's really cold here during the day. We've got a lot of wind. High desert's always windy, but in the early spring in March, it's a cold wind. So my husband's getting what he needs to get done early and quickly, and then he comes back in because it's a bitey cold out there. Even when the winds come from the south, it's still cold. So anyhow, let's go ahead and take a look at the runes here to get us started. For those of you who are new here, thank you for coming by and welcome. I hope you'll click subscribe and come back. I do this on Mondays and Thursdays of every week, and just kind of do a little reading here. We start out with taking runes as the significators, which just is a fancy way of saying the overall perspective of the reading, basically. And then I'll draw 3 cards, and sometimes I'll take a couple more if I need them. Generally speaking, if I do take another card, it's just 1, but I don't take any more than 5 so altogether, right? And otherwise, it's a really long reading. But the cards will give us the details of what the runes are talking about here. So we're going to start here with Thurzaz. Thurzaz is the 3rd rune of the Elder Futhark. Let me get this out of the way here. It's the 3rd rune of the Elder Futhark. It's Thor's rune. It looks like a thorn. In fact, that's the key word for it, thorn. Looks kind of like a rose thorn. It's basically about what opposes you. It's breaking through difficulties and obstacles. If you think about Thor's hammer, you know, in the movies, he swings the hammer around, right? And he's breaking up the clouds, and he's breaking up this and that. But basically, he's trying to control the situation, and that's really what this is about, whether it's self-control or what's controlling you. Something could be opposition that's trying to control you. You're trying to break through all of that to I guess regain your own control of the chaos that's going on in your life. It can indicate impulsive behavior either from you or from someone else, but that's Thurzaz. Let's take a look at that would be the above side, or the higher awareness side of things. On the ego side of things, or physical reality side of things, let's throw down the 4 Geomancy runes here, the elemental ones. They're coded fire, air, water, and earth, and that's the order in which I'm going to put them. So we have Acquisitio, which is gain. Now, Acquisitio, its complement is Emissio. Let's see, is this Acquisitio? No, this is Emissio. This is Acquisitio. This is what they look like. This one here is Acquisitio. This is Emissio. You're talking about gain and loss here, exploring both ends of that perspective there about, and realistically, it doesn't have to be financial. It could be in terms of Acquisitio, in terms of gain. You're gaining something today. It doesn't necessarily have to be money or financially related. It could also be the increase of something. So these 2 runes can be looked at energetically. Emissio would be the decrease of something, and Acquisitio would be the increase of something. And so either we're looking at gaining control of ourselves or of a situation today with the energy of Thurzaz, and doing that from a higher perspective. Maybe it could be that. It could be the increase of a lack of impulse control. You could see it that way as well. Let's go ahead though, and I'm just going to shuffle just a little bit more here, and then we'll cut the deck and take the lower half, and I'll take 3 cards, and we'll see what this is actually talking about. But hopefully it's about gaining control of a situation maybe that might be a little out of control or chaotic, or understanding what your opposition is. And hopefully it's not the self doing it. Hopefully it's somebody else. But I don't know. It could be about gaining some self-control today here. We've got two cards from the major arcana, so it's a higher. The major arcana cards are considered soul archetype cards, and so with that, in that respect, they're basically the lessons that the soul comes in, the overall lessons the soul comes in to experience in form in one way or another. So they're very high vibratory cards, high vibratory ideas. So again, they're going to align well with the rune Thurisaz and the higher perspective that we need to have here. Let's see. The other card we have is the is a member of the court, the King of Cups. And so that's not going to have a numerology. Let's go ahead and take the numerology. We have Temperance. We have the Empress here. And so we're looking at I'm going to do the numerology here real quick for the reading. We have a 3 for Thurisaz plus 14. 14 reduces to 5 for Temperance, and then another 3 for the Empress here, and so that's an 11. So right there you're looking at the master number for awakening and illumination, enlightenment. And so again, maybe gaining control over our own impulses today is the theme of the reading, especially when we begin with Temperance. Again, card 14 of the major arcana has a 5 numerology. 5 is about change. It's about protection, freedom versus restriction. But with Temperance, we're talking about doing things in moderation. Here we're blending, the angel is standing there with 1 foot on the ground, on the land, 1 foot in the water. You see the angel has a cup in each hand and is pouring water from one to the other. And essentially, we're combining fire with water here. You see the glyph for fire here. You see the red on the angel's wings. You see the emanations coming out from his head right there. You see the sun rising, so you've got some fire element there throughout. But you basically what the angel is doing is balancing will with emotion here, and staying grounded by having 1 foot on the land. That would be the earth element. You'll generally see more than one element in these cards. Even in the minor arcana, you're going to see more than one element represented in these cards. And a lot of the time, not with every card, but with a lot of them. Now the aces, no, it's going to contain the energy of that particular suit, that particular element that corresponds to that suit. And so, but here you're going to see a whole lot more. But basically, you see the sun disk here in the middle of the angel's forehead, and you see the path rising up from the water between the 2 peaks here. Again, balance. Anytime you see 2 of something that's separated by something else, generally speaking, a path, then you're looking at balance. Sometimes you'll see it where you'll have like 2 trees that look identical, one on either side, or 2 cliffs, or it could be 2 pillars or 2 towers or something. Whenever you see that in tarot, you're looking at it's basically an expression of balance, or taking the middle ground or something, the middle path, the middle way. But here, Temperance is really about moderation and balance. And that may be a little bit of a change from if you're given to a lot of reaction or a lack of impulse control. I think what Thurisaz is trying to say today, and what Acquisitio is saying, is that we need to gain some self-control in that respect. And instead of always allowing the ego to be the one that decides what our reactions are going to be, allow higher self to do that instead. And then what that generally involves is you're going to step back and you're not going to react. You're not going to judge anything until you see more of it's like the number 7 represents the scales, letting things settle out. Well, this is the same kind of energetic principle where you sit back and you watch and you try to be sure of what's really going on before you make a response. And sometimes the best thing to do is not to respond at all, just to, nod your head or whatever. Someone's talking to you and they're saying things that you want to, they want to get a rise out of you or something, or you're going to react in horror to what they're telling you or whatever. Instead of doing that, just stop and wait and try to stay calm and non-reactive, basically finding that level of moderation, finding that balance, where you're not contributing to the situation. In other words, you're actually going to maybe hopefully provide that balancing energy in the situation. Remember that everything vibrates, everything is energy. And it may seem like, they're in these physical forms, but in truth, all we are is just a collection of energy molded together in these forms for whatever time we're here. And the soul needs a vehicle to function in, and that's all this is. And so it comes together, the soul infuses into it, and there you go. It's who we are when we're in form. But it doesn't mean we're not the soul, or that the soul should not be driving that experience. And of all of the cards in the tarot, I think Temperance pretty much describes that. This is higher awareness. Let's keep things calm. Let's keep things moderate. Let's keep things balanced here today. And again, that might be, it's like in the balance point between freedom and restriction, maybe with the 5. That may be why it's the 14th card of the major arcana with the 5 numerology there. Next, we go on to the King of Cups. Now, the king is on his throne. He's it's not quite as ornate as the queen, but you can see there he's in his blue gown, blue robe, blue dress of some kind. You see the orange complement here, reddish orange, and the yellow. You see a red ship over here in the background. He's holding a cup in his hand, just like the angel is doing here. He's holding a scepter that kind of looks like a cup at the top. And he's not really looking you in the eye. A lot of the time the kings don't. They're kind of in their own little world. But the King of Cups is basically, he can be wise and loving and spiritual and insightful, intuitive, generous, all of the understanding, but he can also have problems with commitment. He can also be very passive aggressive. And so you never really know where you stand with him, because one minute he's this and the next minute he's that. So there's not a lot of moderation. Now this card could represent you, or the qualities therein, or it could represent the individual that you're either controlling that passive aggressiveness within, or it could be somebody else in your orbit that is acting that way, and you're having to deal with that. And instead of getting angry, instead of getting being confronting in the whole thing, sometimes it's easier to come at it in a little more moderate way. Either sidestep the whole thing and don't let them get away with whatever nonsense they're pulling. But maybe direct confrontation may not be the way to do it here. You might have to come around and suddenly the individual finds themselves in a position where, oh gosh, people know what game I'm playing here today, and I thought I was being crafty, but I'm not being crafty enough, because they get it. They're on to me, in other words. And so whether, again, this is what opposes you, maybe you experience a little passive aggressiveness in your own life, in the way you deal with things, or see at minimum it's manipulative. Okay, instead of being direct with other people, you're somebody who isn't. You're a little more indirect, and you try to get people to do things for you in a way that really is more manipulative than it is respectful of the relationship. And so it could be something like that. To employ temperance as a response to that, you start to realize the impact of your behavior, for example. And again, if this is about somebody else, if the king is actually, maybe you have a boss who's this way. And instead of just coming out and saying what the person needs to say to everybody, they're going to find a way to manipulate, and get them to do things, without having to come out and actually say something. Or maybe there's somebody who really won't deal with problems. There's a problem between staff or whatever, and it's up to the boss to deal with it. because it's something that's gotten to a point, like with Thursday, sometimes you're dealing with a chaotic situation. And if that's the case and the boss won't do it, then, maybe you're going to be having to deal with these people directly, and then that impacts the situation at work. And so you really need an outside referee to make a decision about what needs to happen here. And if there's somebody, that's causing problems in the workplace, it's ultimately up to the boss to deal with it. They can't just sit back there and let it go on, and do nothing because, oh my gosh, maybe they're just too passive to deal with things, so it could be something like that even. But it just seems to me that either there's an increase of that sort of stuff happening today and you're having to cope with it from someone else. Again, it could be someone in a position of authority that simply will not deal with a situation. Again, like at work. It's like a parent that does nothing to discipline their children, right? And the kids are tired of it because there's one kid in the family that's always causing trouble, that's always bothering everybody else. Maybe they're getting into fights or whatever, and the parent or the parents won't do anything about it. Just like, yeah, whatever. They're too wrapped up in their own stuff and they don't care, right? They're not going to get up off the couch and go discipline anyone. And it could be something like that. If you've experienced that in your life, then you know what I'm talking about. And where parents are just ineffectual and the kids get to do whatever they want to. And if one's harming another one in some way, being mean or taking their toys or breaking things or whatever it is kids do, when one wants to be destructive, and of course they're not going to destroy their own stuff. They're going to go into the other room and destroy their brother's stuff or their sister's stuff, right? And so because there's no boundaries there. The thing about the card of temperance is realistically what it's saying is there's some healthy boundaries there to between your will and your emotions, what you assert yourself to do and how you feel about it all. And again, when that gets to be too big of a situation in a person, that's when we get to passive aggressiveness, right? And these people cannot be relied on to do the right thing. They just can't when they're like that. So either this again is describing this within you, and you're having to learn a little bit about the impact of that on people, on others that you're dealing with, whether it's family, friends, coworkers, whoever it is, right? Getting those boundaries defined in a much better way is the actual goal of that. It's the lesson that needs to be learned here, the higher self lesson that needs to be learned, right? And then when you do, you have the Empress. This is card 3 of the Major Arcana. She comes after the Fool, the Magician, and the High Priestess. The Fool takes the leap into form. The Magician creates the physical reality or the consciousness, the conscious reality, and the High Priestess takes care of the subconscious level. And then from there, the Empress is formed, and she gives birth to creation. After that, she's followed by the Emperor and the introduction of authority, or the father principle into things. But she comes first. It's not, you don't see the Lover's card next, which could indicate the birth of creation between the two. No, it comes from her. You see her crown of stars of Merkabah. You see you see the grain here. This is wheat growing. That suggests fertility. All around her, you can see abundance. You see the waters of life coming through here. Waters of creation coming in. You see the vitality of the yellow sky. You see all elements here involved in the Empress. And you see and I think I started to say, you see the shield here, the heart-shaped shield with the glyph for Venus, with a green center here, which is abundance and really represents the Earth Mother here, and bringing forth creation in onto the planet, basically. The Empress is really the mother aspect, whereas the Emperor would be considered the father aspect. She represents abundance, the receptive principle, beauty, success. Again, you see the waters of life here coming in and spilling forth. She's sort of above it all. It's over here. It kind of goes off to the side and you can't see it. But basically, we're talking, she's kind of somewhat reclined in her chair. You can't see too well here, but she's actually pregnant there. And again, you see the crown of stars or Merkabahs, and Merkabahs are the soul vehicle. So again, she's drawing all the souls in to then give birth to creation. And so when you're able then to control your impulses or to deal with the impulses around you that aren't all that effective, especially if they're passive aggressive, you're dealing with somebody else that's that way. Once you get a handle on that, I think that the increase of self-control is palpable. It's felt by everyone. Things can calm down. There's not this sense of being erratic or impulsive, and not really and reacting before you really understand the situation that's going on. I suspect that this is not about somebody else in your life. I suspect this is about the passive aggressive tendencies that we all tend to have from time to time. If you're somebody that this is just your way of doing things, then really what this is saying to you is that that's a lack of impulse control. It really is. You may think it's not, but it really is. Either way, you're trying to control with too much pressure or not enough. And if you're somebody that tries to control passively, then you're somebody that tends toward embracing victimology, and you want to control the situation that way, or you want to control it from the standpoint of, oh, if you all don't stop, I'm going to get upset. We don't want to upset that person. Maybe the person starts to cry or something. It's like, well, ooh, everybody calm down. We've made her cry, or we've made him get upset, or whatever. But instead of standing up for themselves and saying, "Hey, I don't like what's going on," they react emotionally. Passive aggression is a very emotional type of a situation. Instead of trying to be the understanding person, basically you're not. It's just a way to avoid getting involved really at all. It's not really about connecting with the people involved that you're trying to control. It's simply about trying to control a situation that doesn't need to be controlled that way. Everybody has to be able to control themselves, and they can't be responding to guilt or anything else to make that happen. They need to control themselves because that's what they need to do, and there's consequences if you don't. But dealing with people in a way that doesn't promote that understanding, and to have people own their own stuff, basically, it's a weird place to be, because nothing gets resolved. If you're dealing with people on that level, nothing ever gets resolved. It's just about, oh, well, we don't want to upset that person, and so if it's something like that, there has to be an increase in self-control. There has to be an increase in honesty. There has to be an increase in understanding of what's truly going on. With the 11 numerology for the reading, that's got to come from higher awareness. It's not going to happen on an ego level. And it's hard for people that are passive aggressive to see that within themselves, because it's all self-reinforcing. If they're passive about it, they get what they want, and they don't really have to lift a finger to do it. They can just get a look on their face, and everybody knows the look, and it's like, oh boy, we need to stop now. Well, that's fine. It gets everybody to stop. But what if something's happening that needs to be worked out? And that's what all the tension's about. You can't have somebody in the room try to always stop that sort of dialogue. And that's what somebody who's passive aggressive will do. It kind of puts them in this weird quandary where they don't know what to do. They don't live here in the center with anybody. They're on each extreme. And usually they adopt one or the other, right, as to where they're going to function. And so if they're always on the aggressive side, then they're the ones that come in, and they're volatile, and they react in a volatile way to a situation that needs more moderation, needs to have a little more a more balanced reaction to it. So either end of the spectrum doesn't contribute positively to any kind of situation that's happening. So again, either this is a reading that's talking about somebody that you're having to deal with that's like this, and the only way to get through it is to find a way to be moderate around them, or it's dealing with you. And that's what I think it's more likely. I like to kind of cover all the bases, particularly if we have a court card in the mix, because again, you're either talking about the individual, an older, in this case, an older man in authority, or an older person in authority, because it doesn't necessarily have to be a man. It could just be a woman who's very, very strong-willed or something, and doesn't really listen, just wants to control the situation, right? Doesn't really care what it is, just wants to control the situation. Well, sometimes knowing why something's going on has to happen. And in the aggressive side of passive aggression, they don't care what it is. They don't care at all. Just stop. I'm going to control the situation. They don't care what the problem is. They don't want to get down to the solution. They don't want to find out what's really going on. They just want to control it. And either end of the spectrum will do that, right? And so generally speaking, though, if we're talking about with Thurisaz, what opposes you, either you're dealing with somebody like this and that's what's opposing you today, and you're having to break through the fallacy of it all, right? And your ability to do that is increased today, especially with this 11 numerology here for the reading. That it's like, no, we're gonna deal with this once and for all here. We're gonna see it for what it is. We're gonna see it from a higher perspective, and we're gonna fix the problem, right? Instead of having somebody who's aggressive just come in, that's maybe an authority figure, it's just be quiet. I don't care what the problem is. Well, people that are on the other side of that equation, maybe there is an actual problem there that needs to be resolved. And the person in the aggressive stance or the passive stance isn't going to allow that to happen. So no understanding may take place, right? So, but other than that, it's generally speaking the individual themselves, that this is what opposes them, and they don't even realize it. That trying to deal with people in a way that you don't take time to understand the situation, you just want to control it in some way. You don't really care what's going on. You just want to be able to control it. That's not going to be very useful. It's not going to be useful to the other people involved, especially if they need somebody to come in and be the objective voice that says, all right, tell me what's going on here. Because a passive-aggressive person isn't going to ask that. They just aren't. They're just going to want to try to control the outcome and be the one that comes in and, tamps out the flames, basically. But they don't realize all they're doing is ratcheting things up when they do that. Because whatever's going on doesn't ever get fixed. It doesn't ever get talked about. Instead of being the referee that the person in the king position could be, instead it's just, no, I don't care what this is. Let's just, you're disturbing my peace, basically. And they don't really care what the situation at hand is. And so so I think today with the 11 numerology for the reading and the whole idea of awakening and illumination and enlightenment, there's a chance here for some clarity to happen today about what's really going on. And if you're somebody who's not really trying to get down to the heart of what's happening, you just want it to stop, and you're not interested in that, know that that's really not going to help the situation, and the situation is going to return. And so in that sense, it's that passive aggressiveness that is essentially opposing you, your own passive aggressiveness that's opposing you from actually coming to the understanding that the king could have. The whole idea of compassion and understanding and healing and all of that. If you're somebody that isn't interested in that, know that you need to be. And that's really the tendency not to is really what opposes you from coming together with people in harmony and love and kindness and generosity and understanding and hope and all of those things. It's not a balanced way to do things. Temperance is suggesting find that balance. Control the will, which is the aggressive side, with water, which is the passive side. You see? Find that balance. Find that intersection where you can then deal honestly with people. And instead of coming in and trying to just get everybody to stop by your reaction, it's your reaction that's actually the problem. You're never going to get to the truth of the matter. So you have to then change that about yourself and break through that whole dynamic that you're living with and expressing every day, because believe me, it's expressed every day when it's that strong. And Thurisaz is a very strong rune. So it's really saying now is the time to increase that ability to break through whatever is preventing you from actually interacting in a balanced fashion with people. Maybe that's the way to say it here. And again, with the clarity found with the master number 11, 11, 22, 33, those are all master numbers. 11 is awakening and illumination and enlightenment. 22 is the cosmic builder, so profound soul level change. 33 is Christ consciousness, where everything is coming from higher awareness at that point. You're no longer thinking in terms of the physical realm that you're in. It's all coming from spirit. These are very powerful numbers, and they vibrate on a level that can really invoke true change in an individual. And so I think that that's what this is saying. Again, Thurisaz is about controlling impulsive behavior, and passive aggressiveness at its heart is a lack of impulse control. You're either going to go one way or the other, but that middle ground that you need to be in, you're not there. But that's where you need to be. And so you need to find that balance and get out of the extremes and come to the center with everybody and deal with them on that level. So, and when you do that, you have an increase, an acquisitio increase of what you create here. What you end up creating is a whole new world for yourself. That's a whole lot richer than and more abundant than in terms of your interactions with others than dealing with people only on these extremes. Does that make sense? So it's kind of a heady thing here on a Thursday. I don't think that Mondays was quite this heady, but I think that this is a struggle people have. Some people really have it, and unfortunately, they don't get down in the mud of it all, the mud of life. The interactions that may not always go the way we want. Maybe things are not as happy as we want them to be all the time, but they're things you still have to deal with, and you can't deal with it by simply stamping it out on one side and being manipulative on the other. It's like, oh, let's not talk about this, let's just let it go, just let it go. It's like, no, sometimes you can't let it go. Sometimes you have to have a conversation first, right? So everybody understands where everybody else is coming from, and if apologies need to be made, then they need to be made, right? If people need to have some realization about themselves and how they're acting, well, then so be it. Isn't that part of growth? But when you're living on those extremes, it's difficult to get there with people. And that's where you need to be. You need to be here instead of out here on one end or the other. So little moderation leads to some better understanding and gives birth to a more abundant type of relationships with other people. So that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy your weekend. I hope you'll click subscribe and come back again on Monday for another edition of As Above, So Below. Be good to yourself, be good to one another, and blessed be.